Okay, so good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to welcome you all at our Pavilion UN Climate Change Global Innovation Hub. My name is Nitin Arora. I'm the project manager for UGIH. And we are starting our session today with a very interesting session, actually, which talks about the role of faith and spirituality and its impact on the climate change issue. So I will now request Mr. Masamba Thioe, the lead of the UGIH, to give the welcoming remarks and also moderate this session. Masamba, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Nitin. And good morning to all of you and warm welcome. Very pleased to have you here. I would expect the room to be completely full. I know that it will not be the case today, but hopefully in the coming 5 years, it could be considered as one of the most important sessions here in this Global Innovation Hub Pavilion. This is because this is one of the most important topic and one of the most relevant topic for what the Global Innovation Hub is trying to support. And why is it like that? This is because the sustainability crisis is first a moral crisis. And we cannot address the sustainable development goal if we do not address the inner development goal. As it is said in Islam, one of the most urgent things is what is called jihad al-nafs. We need to try to address our inner development goal. This is something really important. My name is Masamba Thioe. I'm the project executive of the UN Climate Change Global Innovation Hub. And the Global Innovation Hub is an initiative of the UNFCCC Secretariat that was launched at COP26 with a one-fold vision. How do we mobilize innovation to serve the many people and the planet? And a twofold mission. The first component of the mission is how do we facilitate the acceleration and the upscale deployment of existing technology. The second part of the mission is how do we accelerate the development of the missing solution. So we identify existing one, and we facilitate their acceleration and their upscale deployment. And the missing one, we use science to accelerate their development. And then we have a threefold core value that are articulated around three key principles: caring, sharing, and daring. Caring because we strongly believe that we cannot address the climate and the sustainability crisis if innovation does not genuinely care about the well-being and the needs of the many people and the planet. And here again, I would like to provide a quote that explains why this is absolutely relevant to face. There is one of the Sufi guide who share a dream that he has, a dream of hell and paradise. When he dreamed about hell, he found a large group of people sharing a dish. And then the dish was at the center, it was a big circle, and they needed to have very long spoon to be able to eat. But because the spoon were very long, they had difficulties when they get the food to put it in their mouth. So it was very difficult to articulate that, and they were not able to eat. So this was the vision of the hell. The vision of the paradise was a situation where each of these people were taking the food, and because they cannot maneuver the food to eat, each of them were actually feeding the other one. So this is the concept of caring. When we are caring for the many people, when we are caring for the planet, we are also caring for us. And sharing, we need to share knowledge, we need to share experience, we need to have a mindset of solution provider. Response to the climate crisis is not about solving our own problem, the problem of my city, the problem of my country, the problem of my company. This is more about developing solutions that others can use. Finally, the daring part, it is very important for innovation. The problem is most of the time when we are setting goal and target, when it comes to climate and sustainability, we tend to set the goal and the targets based on our understanding of what is possible. And it's understandable because most of the time, when you set a goal, the first question that people will ask you is what will you do to achieve your goal? And you cannot simply say, I do not know. If you say, I do not know, people will say, he is not or she is not credible. So the problem is that if you take this approach, you actually tend to lock innovation. The goal and target should not be set based on what is perceived as possible, but based on what is needed. And the gap between what is needed and what is possible is actually the key driver for innovation. Otherwise, we are locked in a vicious circle because those that are setting the goal and the target will say, we cannot be ambitious because we do not have the solution. And then the solution developer will say, we cannot develop transformative solution because we do not have demand. And we are locked in a vicious circle. So caring, sharing, and daring are the really three principles that the Global Innovation Hub is promoting for innovation to effectively serve the many people and the planet. Yesterday there was here one session on brain and mind science. And actually we have neuroscientists here, and we were discussing how the moral problem of our society is affecting brain and why it is important to work on that aspect if we want to address the climate and sustainability crisis. And one of the key leverage points for that battle is actually faith. Faith is very important to come up with a brain that is a stable brain. It's why I have said that this is one of my best sessions.
I'm sorry.
And I'm really looking forward to have a great discussion. We have great panelists. We have Mrs. Emilce Kudi, Secretary of the Pontifical Commission for Latin America. And then we have Sister Jayanti Kirpalani, CEO of Brahma Kumaris. And we have Mr. Ovais Sarmat, former Deputy Executive Secretary of the UNFCCC Secretariat. And we have finally joining virtually the Most Right Reverend Dr. Mark Handley Andrews, Bishop, Episcopal Diocese of California. So I will give the floor to each of our panelists to make their statement, and then we can have round of discussion. So first, maybe starting with Mrs. Emile Sekoudé. Can we talk about a new role for diplomacy, public convention?
Well, it's a good and great question. Thank you so much for inviting me here. Usually, diplomacy is the last opportunity that we must to use when we are going and when our people is going to die. No? Diplomacy, at the beginning, in the mythology, diplomacy was the role that some person has to convince the gods to stop or to prevent the people is going to die. At the moment, I think diplomacy recuperate this strong role to save the life. Because for the last maybe 20 or 30 years, the role of the diplomacy was focused only over commerce, no? But market especially. And sometimes we lost the importance of the life. And as Pope Francis said, this situation, this ecological crisis, is the result of a system that is going to kill the life in the earth. And for some part of the universe, of the humanity, this is new, and now an strange sensibility for to save the planet appear like something new. But for the people like us who are believers, compassion and love the earth and the people is our life. That is the role of relations, not to save the life, to the contemplation of the beauty in the creation. And maybe we have something in common between all the relations, and this is the idea that the humanity is something important. The humanity has a value in itself, and we must take care the creation and the humanity because we love the creation. In the case of the Catholicisms, we have a system that we call the social doctrine or teacher of the church, and because we believe in God, we trust in the humanity. This is important. Fe en Dios es confianza, con fe in the humanity. Because we believe in God, we trust in the humanity. If we don't trust in the humanity, politics in democratic sense is impossible. And the solution for this ecological crisis is in the politics, not in the economy. Economy is something to help the politics. This is our position. So to trust in the humanity is so important to understand that the politics is the best way for a social environmental dialogue. But at the moment, we lost the trust in our citizen, in our fellow citizen, in the humanity. So when you mention compassion, like part of the topic to put it on the table to discuss in this panel, compassion is important because compassion is the capacity to put in the place of the other and the capacity to have, or the sensibility to feel what they are feeling at the moment that they are at the limit to lose their life. For Catholic Church, we have a methods, and the methods is to see, to discern, and to act. To see or to listen the other, not to speak all the time, not to teach, not to try to put order or correction, but to listen, to see. And then the discernment. The discernment is the moment, is the spiritual moment, when we try to listen through the people what God is telling us in each moment. Because we think that God is in communication with us all the time. And we must listen to him through the people, through the creation, through the beauty. So this moment of spirituality, the discernment that Pope Francis insists, is the moment where we can listen what God asks to us, and then to act. And this is important because, in my opinion, and in the opinion of Pope Francis, the relation, they will have an important role at this moment, because we must to illuminate, again, the discernment of our governments. So when Pope Francis yesterday gave a message for this COP28, he spoke about peace, not only about weather, but about peace, because the people is going to die in different war, he said, no? Of course, for the majority, the war is only when you are with guns and in the middle of the battle, but this is a war too. The people is going to die because the environmental conditions are absolutely bad. So the role of the politics and the government is so important. And the connection between relations and government is important, because relation continue having the capacity to illuminate the decision of our governments. So I think we can put in discussion how we connect again politics and religion without to have totalitarianisms or authoritarianisms, only to start to talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. A lot of important point. One element that is central, which is compassion, and the fact that we have to be always optimistic, because if you believe in God, we need to trust humanity. I think it's a very important concept, and we should not despair. And the importance of the politic, which will help solve the problem, and our capability to listen to God, because as you have mentioned, He keeps on sending signs, and we need to be able to listen to the sign. And finally, this approach, see, listen, discernment, and act, which is a process that we can use to respond to this crisis. So thank you very much for your first intervention. Now we will move to Sister Jayanti Kripalani. So she will address how can spirituality awareness inspire and shape transformative climate action. You have the floor.
Thank you for the opportunity of being here. I appreciate greatly the fact that UNFCCC has taken faith into consideration, because faith has sometimes been neglected, thinking that we have to deal with things on a secular level. Yes, secular is important, but 85% of the world's population belong to some faith tradition or another. So that's a very, very loud voice. And the beautiful thing over the last several years has been that the faith communities have come together to present a combined collaborative voice at UNFCCC. And the voice has been talking about values, because we may belong to different faith traditions, have different scriptures, different traditions, different cultures even. Everything can be different, but at the heart of every faith is spirituality. And within spirituality are the values that civilization is based on. And so I feel that the voice of faith brings the voice of values into the picture. Because for a long time, what it's felt like is that the economic factor has dictated our relationship with nature, which is a little bit crazy. Because nature is sacred, nature is life, and our relationship with nature has been continually one in which we've taken so much, and nature has given with abundance and dignity and grace, but in return, we have just assaulted nature, exploited nature, aggressed nature, and of course today we are seeing the imbalance within the elements as a direct result of the violence we have inflicted on nature. So the voice of faith is saying, remember, life is sacred, nature is sacred, human life is sacred, of course, but it's only when I recognize my spiritual identity that then I realize how valuable human life is. Otherwise, it's just a physical experience. You come and you go, and that's it. But when you realize the value of human life and its sanctity, then you're able to give respect to all other human beings. But it extends beyond that. It extends to valuing every single part of creation. And so when we think about the interconnectedness of humans and all species, it's again a very sacred thread that connects us. And when we have respect for human life, we also begin to have respect for all other forms of life, all other creatures. And we begin to see the web of life that is so intricate and has sustained this planet over millennia. And what we've done is gradually broken those threads through the exploitation and the extinction of species. And then beyond that, there's also the connection with the elements of nature. In fact, this very precious body of mine, and is precious for each and every one, that itself is connected with the earth, the air, the water, the fire, the space. And so nature and I are intimately connected. And if I disrespect nature out there, then I'm actually also causing a huge amount of damage to this body of mine. And this is what we're seeing. I won't go into details, but COVID came as a shocking reminder that we are breaking the web of life and we're disregarding the laws of nature. And so it's a whole different area to explore this, so I won't go into it at this moment. But I think that this is the first and foremost thing that nature that spirituality and faith have to offer, that all forms of life in nature are sacred. And the second thing is that when I realize that there's an interconnection between everything that's happening on the planet, this is where then I feel compassion has a big role to play. And the spiritual law is that everything begins inside and then gets projected outside through our thoughts, our words, our actions. And so when I can recognize myself as a spiritual being and allow God's light and love to reach me, then compassion, which is love and action together, it's not just love in a spiritual sense, but it's also a manifestation of that love in a very practical sense in action. And so in that awareness of interconnection, when I allow compassion to emerge within myself through the relationship with the divine, then I'm able to have compassion for other creatures, but also compassion for nature itself. And so I think that since COVID times, we've been talking a lot about compassion, but I think it's really time to use this in a very practical way on an external level also. And the third thing that I'd like to talk about is the whole question of respect, because respect is where I think we've fallen down. We don't respect ourselves, and so we go through huge ups and downs of superiority complex, inferiority complex, ego and anger. But when I know myself as a spiritual being, I'm able to value myself because of the values that I hold internally. It's not my hands and feet that have values, it's the inner being, the soul, that has values. And so respect comes only when I recognize myself as that inner being. Then I can respect you and other people, all people as my family, and then I can respect this planet as my home. We don't have plan B. We don't have another home. This is our one and only home. And we've forgotten how to look after it and care for it. And I love this comment about caring and sharing and innovation, because it actually describes what spirituality is able to do. Care comes through the spirit, sharing comes through that generosity of heart, and then innovation comes through silence. When I'm able to have time for reflection, for silence, then new ideas, new paradigms, a new way of thinking can emerge in a very natural way. And so I can go on for a long time, but I won't. But I think I've explained a few things that I feel are very important. One last thing about action, just a few headlines. Since 1980s, Brahma Kumaris have been using renewable energy, solar energy in particular, at our headquarters in India. Currently, I think we're the largest non-industrial users of renewable energies in India. The second thing we've been involved with is, of course, tree plantation. Our latest project over just the last 2 years, of course, it's been there a long time, but just the statistics for the last 2 years is about 2 million trees planted just within that space of time, and in particular by young people. And the third thing that I want to mention is we're all aware of organic farming now. But there's a step beyond that that's connected very deeply with faith, and that is yogic farming, which means that, yes, we follow the organic rules, but we also have people, usually it's the farm, small holdings, the family looking after the farm. And this started with one family in Maharashtra, one of the largest states in India. And this family decided that they would meditate on the seeds, they would meditate on the soil, they would plant seeds with the family meditating, they would nurture the seedlings, and at every step along the way, it was meditation, meditation, meditation. And so the power of vibrations has been proven to be something that's highly effective, and it costs nothing in terms of monetary value, but it just costs attention and a bit of time. And so what we found is that the microbacterial content of the soil is of higher quality, the food production is of a higher grade, and so on all levels. And of course, you save a lot of money not using fertilizers and so on. And we found that it's now catching on. We're experimenting with 70 farms across the whole of India, and it's being researched by 4 different universities who are seeing the results of this. So the power of faith can actually allow food production to move in a very different way. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your very interesting intervention. A lot of very important points that you have mentioned. Our interconnection with nature, which is something extremely important. Relation with the divine, which is at the basis of compassion. Respect for ourselves, that we can respect others and respect Mother Nature. And the fact that also we need to take the time to reflect and listen to ourselves and listen to the divine. A lot of very important points. Thank you for that. Now I will move to Mr. Ovais Sarmad. So same question. To what extent spirituality can help address the climate and sustainability crisis?
Thank you very much, Masamba, and it's a great pleasure for me to be here back in UNFCCC after having stepped down some months ago. And it's a great honor also to share the panel with Sister Jayanti and others from different faiths and representing different traditions. So it's a great honor and it's a great pleasure. Thank you very much. This is an extremely important and I think a very relevant topic, and that's the reason that drew my attention and brought me here, is what is happening with climate change and the efforts to address it, which are underway in different areas by different stakeholders and negotiations, climate action, large amounts of money being thrown into addressing climate change, and all of that is good, but it goes to a certain extent, and we are still lagging behind. So in situations like this, that's when
I believe faith, concepts of spirituality, looking deep inside our values and value systems need to be brought out and questioned. What is it that we are doing, we in the sense humanity, what is it that we are doing wrong, and what is it that we need to do to correct the wrongs of the human behavior that has caused the situation that we are all confronted with. And me as a Muslim, coming from the Islamic faith as a background, and I've studied many other religions and interacted with interfaith dialogue on many situations and discussions. So I will start off by just referring to a few references from the Quran, which gives a good indication of who we are and what we are doing here. First is about stewardship on the earth. And Quran clearly says that it is He who has made you successors, generations after generations in the earth. So we are the stewards of God on earth. Now, what does that stewardship mean? That comes with huge amount of responsibility in terms of respecting everything around us, relationships, the nature, the resources, and that goes in line with the famous saying which says we have not borrowed the nature, the environment, the resources from the previous generations. We've actually, we have not inherited, but we have borrowed it from future generations. So that is a huge responsibility to us. And another thing that Quran clearly says is about balance in creation. It says, and the heaven, He, God, raised and imposed the balance, that you not transgress within the balance. And this is what we as humanity are unfortunately doing. We have transgressed the limits of creation, which is perfect. When we look around us, the creation, the nature, everything within it has a very intricate balance. And when it is transgressed, then it reacts. And that's what we are seeing here. And another thing is about sustainable use of resources. And again, Quran clearly says, eat and drink from the provisions of God, and do not commit abuse on the earth, spreading corruption. Corruption, but in a different sense. And this verse encourages responsible consumption and warns against wastefulness and corruption on earth. And that's what we are seeing as well. So, but at the same time, in almost all religious scriptures and faith and beliefs, there are remedies. And as Sister Jayanti said, it's the respect, it's the empathy, it's the compassion that we must bring out. And in my perspective, the best way to do that is to start shedding the ego, shedding the desire, shedding the fame and the positions. And then when we do that, gradually, it takes time to reflect on it and do that, then we come to our deep nature, the self, which is very closely then linked and intricately related to the nature. And that's when we start seeing things going in the right direction. And that's where we are, that's what we need to now do. And there are many examples in all scriptures as well, that when human beings transgress and go against the nature, go against the guidance provided to us by God and reflected in different scriptures, there is things that happen that harm the environment, the human beings, and that is not actually a punishment from God, but it's actually what we are doing to ourselves. Because God is not there to punish. He guides, He provides guidance and the pathways and spiritual messages. And it is for us to then take heed of and follow through. which unfortunately at this stage we are not doing. And I'm really very touched and feel extremely privileged that the different faiths in the faith community associated with the UNFCCC process, and I've been very privileged to interact with many of them over the years. They've come forward, but I'd like to see that become more evident in terms of their messaging, in terms of their engagement, going beyond the written word of negotiations and climate action, but to really question the spirituality, the deep responsibility of empathy, of compassion, the responsibility that we are all entrusted with, and then act upon it. And that is what is needed. I really, if I had the pen in my hand, I would really embed those in the cover decision that would come out of COPs, that should be the most important thing. And from there it follows everything else that needs to happen. So that's what I feel, Masamba, and it's a great pleasure. We'll be happy to share further thoughts and have a discussion about it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ovez. Here again, very important point. Humans are the deputy of God in the earth, and they are expected to take care of nature. What is happening to us is not a punishment from God, but this is a punishment from ourselves. And finally, there are also warning coming from God. We all talk about the need to listen to God and the need to look at the sign it is sending. And I think all this disaster coming out of climate change, what we are currently living, from heat wave, from flooding, all these things should be seen as sign coming from God, as warning. Now I would like to move to our last panelist, the Most Right Reverend Dr. Mark Andley Andrews. Very happy to have you with us. I don't know what time it is in California, but probably it should not be, it should be quite late. Thank you for taking the time to join us. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Excellency Masamba. I'm honored to be with you. It's almost 11 p.m. in San Francisco. We're just about 12 hours apart. And it's not too late. It's just the right time. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you. And we can see you also.
Yeah, wonderful. I've been very inspired by the other three panelists and have taken some good notes that are useful to me. I'm sure they're useful to everyone that is attending. And I'm with you, Masamba. This is such an important session. I hope that the hall has filled up. If it hasn't, as you say, the word will accelerate and ambition will move forward as well as time goes by, because in fact, the climate crisis is a spiritual crisis. What we know is that the values that we hold are the values that shape action. And the values that are creating a false worldview that is the dominant worldview today are the values that we must turn away from and replace with healthy values that promote a balanced and integrated life based on peace and indeed on love. The values of greed and selfishness and short-sightedness, short-term looking, objectification, domination, these malignant values are what underpins a highly profit-driven consumerist world that is based on fossil fuels. So what about the cultivation of positive spiritual values. This is the first COP that has had a physical faith pavilion. It's over across from the Climate Action Center, and it is the work of 50 different faith bodies, including Brahma Kumaris, and it's not only a physical interfaith space, it has a spiritual infrastructure as well, I might say. So we've created a set of meditation cards representing 9 different religions. I'm going to seek to share the screen and see if I can show you these cards. Can you see that?
Yes.
Oh, how exciting that is. So this, my faith is Christianity. Graphically, the Christianity cards are perhaps not as interesting as the other cards like Brahma Kumaris and others, but I speak, from this basis. There are 3 Christianity cards. The first one is confession, and for each one, there is a meditation, and then at the bottom, some questions that prompt us to ask, how does this value, in this case, confession, know the truth, and the truth will set you free? How does that idea of confession, which is explicated in the card, how does it support your climate action? The specific questions here are, how has telling the truth about your own and your community's history proven to be freeing? And what was it like for you and your community to confess to complicity in the climate crisis? The next one is reconciliation. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke often of the arc of the moral universe, which he said bends towards justice. And then we explore reconciliation in the card briefly. And then the questions are, what is your experience with reconciliation? What do you understand by the moral universe? And how might you find this idea helpful? And then finally, forgiveness. Forgiveness is everything. That's a quotation from Dolly Parton, the great American singer and songwriter and icon. We explore forgiveness, which is, again, a central Christian value. And then we ask the question, how has forgiveness played a part in your own climate action? And how do you think we can balance forgiveness with accountability? So there are, as I said, cards from 9 different religions: Baha'i, Brahma Kumaris, Buddhism, Christianity, Taoism, indigenous spirituality, Islam, Judaism, and Sikhi. I invite you to go over to the Faith Pavilion. The cards are printed out there. You can also find a QR code there where you can have digital sets of the cards and explore these spiritual values that are not owned by any one religion, but are centered within those religions. Each of the religions of the world has certain values that are prominent within the suite of values that make up that religion. If we tend or cultivate the healthy values, really, of the whole interfaith world, there's a whole garden of values that will begin to grow in our inner lives. And those will promote the healthiest life that we collectively can live, which is an antidote to the destructive worldview that we take to be reality in our world today. Many of the values of religions in the world are carried by narratives. Stories carry these values even more powerfully, perhaps, than they are written about in theological terms or philosophic terms. Ove spoke about shedding, And what came to my mind is a narrative that is shared by many religions. It began in the Arabic deserts. It's the story of the phoenix. And the phoenix is representative of an individual life, but also individual lives as community, and finally, of the whole world. And the sense of the narrative is that over time, the world wears out, that negative values take over, false worldviews become accepted as realities, and that at a certain point, slightly different, Oves, than shedding, we need to recollect the truth of what we have been that we have projected beyond ourselves as a false world, and face it within ourselves. Those are the flames that consume the phoenix, the world that has worn out. But in that narrative, in that story, a single ember remains in the middle of the pile of ashes that was the false world. And that is the ember from which, nourished by our faith and our love, the new phoenix arises. So narratives like that are throughout our scriptures. They're carried by the sacred storytellers all over the world, and they provide a powerful way to carry values that we can remember and that can inspire us and that we can share with each other. Finally, every religion of which I know has a path to move from disintegration and from brokenness to wholeness. It's a transformative path. It often involves lament and the willingness to tell the truth and to face the truth. It often involves forgiveness and also accountability, but it moves a people from a place and individuals from places of brokenness to places of renewal and transformation and hope. So this is not only a value, a singular value like compassion or courage, but is a dynamic that the religions of the world all have. Many years ago, I took a group of my students. I was a chaplain at an Episcopal school, and we went to Howard University in Washington, D.C., which is a historic Black university. And the great Pearl Primus, who was both one of the leading 20th century modern choreographers, but also an anthropologist, PhD anthropologist, who collected ethnic dances from the African diaspora. The Howard University dancers performed a dance that she had curated from West Africa, in which every 10 years, the people danced a war dance. And the war dance was against the accumulated values that had infiltrated the life of the community and sickened it and made it less healthy. And they performed a dance of spiritual war against those values. The Howard University students living in Washington, D.C. at a time when drug wars were rampant in the capital of our country were dancing against drugs and the destructive force of opioids and others in their lives. It was a very powerful example of how a faith can carry a transformative dynamic from brokenness and sickened life to renewed, integrated, and healthy life. And as far as I know, as I said, each religion has its path. Sometimes those are paths that have to do with times of transition in life, like from childhood to young adulthood. but also from being a householder into elder life, from single life into marriage. At these times of change, often there is a ritual path that guides people from one stage of life, perhaps even a good stage of life, to a new stage of life. So those areas, spiritual values, I invite you to check out the wisdom cards, in the meditation cards in the Faith Pavilion. There's a tree there. It's the wisdom tree, and you can answer the questions and put them up on leaves on the tree. The attention to narrative that carries values into the world. And finally, the path to restoration. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your intervention. A lot of very important ideas. I would like now to share some ideas to conclude this session and before we move to the next one. And I would like to insist on the fact that we should not despair. This is very important for me. So in the Quran, the Quran repeats over and over that up until the very end, up until the very last minute on any scale of affair, human being will retain their option to repent. And if you look at climate change in the remembrance of God, it becomes a holy mirror that teaches us all humility, wonder, and remorse. And when such realization occurs, divine forgiveness follows, and with forgiveness comes healing. So it's very important for us to keep on being hopeful. And I will conclude with some of this verse coming from a poetry of Rumi, who is probably one of the most known poets in the world. Dance when you are broken open. Dance if you have turned the bandage off. Dance in the middle of the fighting. Dance in your blood. Dance when you are perfectly free. And this is somehow beauty in the midst of chaos. But there is a secret to this practice, and it is contained also in a famous Quran verse. Wherever you turn, there is the face of God. So it means that we should never give up in this fight against climate change and for actually regeneration. I would like now to invite all our participants to provide a round of applause to our panelists. Thank you for your time and thank you for your contribution.
Thank you.
Question?
Thank you so much.
Sorry, at the next, we have to move to the next panelist.
We must go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.